We've been told that those walkable, beautiful neighborhoods are a thing of the past. But here's the twist, they're not. There's a small coastal town in Delaware that is quietly proving that we can still build beautiful communities even today. Now, this one is full of character and is designed for connection, not just convenience. And I know that we have talked about this place in some of our other videos recently, but I want to take a deep dive into one of the places that I have been pointing at as the area that we're going to see a ton of growth over the next 10 years, and that's going to be Milton. So let's go ahead and get into it. Again, today we're talking about Milton, Delaware. Now, with so much development pressure hitting the East Coast right now, places like Milton are walking a very tightrope of maintaining their charm while embracing some of that explosive growth that is going on around them. Now, the question becomes, how do you grow without losing your charm? Again, that's the million-dollar question that so many are trying to answer. And trust me, what Milton is doing here is pretty mind-blowing, and I think you should stick around for it. Now, Milton is just a town of about 3,800 people, and they're implementing some strategies that you would expect from places that are 10 times their size. So I'm going to break down exactly how they're doing it, because I think these principles can completely change how we build communities, not only in 2025, but going forward into the future. Now, first up, I would be remiss if we did not get into what makes Milton so special to begin with. Milton's been around since 1672, and that's pretty old. Now, what's crazy is it just isn't age, it's how the town has kept its identity going for over 350 years without turning into a museum or completely dilapidated buildings. Now, it started as the head of Broadkill when the English colonists settled along what is now known as the Broadkill River. They didn't actually call it Milton until about 1807, and it was named after the poet John Milton, and they got their official charter in 1865. Now, during the 1800s, Milton was a serious shipbuilding center, and we're not just talking little boats, we're talking vessels that sailed all over the Atlantic, and the Broadkill River gave them a direct shot to the Delaware Bay, making this the perfect location for shipbuilding. Now, that same river is what we're going to talk about later because it's still central to Milton's identity today, and it's actually the cornerstone of their environmental connection strategy, which we will touch on in a bit. Now, when shipbuilding declined, Milton didn't just dry up and blow away like some other towns. The town pivoted to other industries, things like canning and making evergreen wreaths. It actually got so deep into the wreath business that Milton became known as the land of the holly, which is pretty cool to hear because we're not necessarily known for our evergreen trees. Now, fast forward to today, and Milton has 198 historic buildings listed on the Federal Registry of Historic Buildings. That's a ton for a town this size. And these buildings cover everything from the late 1700s all the way through to the early 1900s, and some of them are absolutely stunning. As we walk through the downtown area, Milton is like time traveling through American architecture. We've got different buildings from different eras. We got styles like Federal style, Victorian, colonial, some Gothic revival. We've got some Queen Anne thrown in there, and we've even got some bungalows. And the majority are in incredible condition, a true testament to the quality of old. Now, the Milton Museum, for instance, is housed in a beautiful 1857 Gothic revival building that originally served as the town's Methodist church. And inside, you'll find the Lydia Black Cannon Museum, a true Victorian gem. I think that building is one of the coolest downtown. And then over on Union Street, there's this row of Federal style homes from the early 1800s that I can only imagine look pretty much exactly like they did 200 years ago. I mean, they are in fantastic shape. Now, what blows my mind is comparing old photos with today's Milton. The scale, the proportions, the details, they've kept it all perfectly intact. Places like the Milton Theater from 1939, it's still up and running as a performance venue today, and they've fixed it up to where it's more modernized. And just wait until you see how these historic buildings are going to compare in price to some of those newer developments that we're getting ready to see, like the granary that we'll explore in a few minutes. The value here is actually surprising for a lot of those historic homes. But here's the thing, Milton isn't stuck in the past. It's very much alive. They figured out how to keep their historic vibe while still evolving with the future and finding some growth, and that's where things really start to get interesting. But first, if you're still watching, you're clearly enjoying the content. My name is Matt Lunden. I'm a local real estate agent, and each week we share everything that we've learned about coastal Delaware in these videos, things like insights, updates, the best spots to live and invest. And if you want to see more videos just like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you can stay in the loop each week when we go live with new content. Now, you might be questioning what makes Milton different. Well, their growth isn't just happening randomly or because some developer showed up with a whole truckload of cash. They've got an actual vision that was created through years of community input, something that some other towns could probably take a lesson from. Milton's comprehensive plan took more than 3 years of intensive work that engaged multiple people across Milton. Again, this isn't just some document that consultants whipped up in some office far away or some document that's collecting dust on a shelf somewhere. This plan actually reflects what the community wants and in the direction they want to see it going in. Now, I love love how this plan emphasizes their connection to the Broadkill River. It literally says that the community has a deep and profound desire to reestablish and strengthen its connection to the Broadkill River, which occupies a place of primacy in the town's emotional and physical heart. When we get to the environmental section later, you'll see exactly how they've turned this river connection into a major quality of life boost and everything they're doing to make sure that it's there for years to come. Milton is straight up acknowledging that their identity is tied to the Broadkill River, and that's huge. It completely changes how development happens, where it happens. You won't see buildings turning their back to the river or treating it like it doesn't matter. It's literally the focal point of the town. Now in 2024, they kicked things up a notch by adopting this community design guide. Now I've seen tons of design guidelines and most of them are super boring and generic. And I've got to say that Milton's is a little bit different from most of the others that I've seen. This community design guide is all about shaping Milton's visual identity as the town grows. And while Milton already has a unique character to it, the guide helps preserve and enhance that distinct feel that so many have come to love. You know, avoiding the kind of cookie cutter development that can make places feel generic in the downtown area specifically. They've got 6 key design principles and they're actually pretty smart, and I think we should dive into them. The first principle is to design for comfort and safety. Buildings and public spaces should feel welcoming and not intimidating to those around it. The second one is create places where people can hang out together. Now, every development is required to have spots where the community can gather and some green spaces to help introduce that into the communities. Third, make it easy to walk and bike around. This is crucial because it means you're not totally dependent on your car, and it truly makes that community feel a lot more close-knit. Fourth is connect buildings and streets to sidewalks. Now that may sound obvious, but they want the town to continue feeling like a warm community and not just cold buildings that are set way back across these massive asphalt parking lots. They want you to feel like you're part of the community. Fifth, we're gonna build on what's already there to maintain character. The new construction shouldn't stick out like a sore thumb, and most importantly, it should not be occurring in the historic district. And then sixth, build up rather than out. This keeps things compact, it preserves those open spaces, and makes neighborhoods much more walkable than some of those more expansive areas that we've seen. But here's the really smart part. They don't apply these principles the same way everywhere across the town. They've tailored them to different areas: town center, residential neighborhoods, big developments, suburban areas, business corridors, and the riverfront. They want to make sure that each area is growing the way that it should. Again, why does this matter? It's because a historic downtown needs totally different standards than a brand new subdivision that's on the outskirts of town. Those two are just never going to be the same no matter how hard we try, and recognizing that is certainly important. By honoring these differences and these different districts, Milton makes sure each area develops in a way that makes sense while still feeling like it's connected or part of the exact same town. They don't want you to feel like you're in a completely different zip code just because you've gone over 2 streets. Now, these district-specific approaches tie directly into the historic preservation efforts that we're about to discuss, which, by the way, aren't just about preserving old buildings, but about creating economic value in a little bit of a unique way. If you could see how these principles play out in different areas, you'd be impressed. Again, downtown buildings come right up to the sidewalk with storefronts that engage pedestrians and welcome you right in. And then in those more residential areas, you've got some front porches, you've got front yards, and they create that nice transition from the public space to the private space. The lesson here for other communities is this nuanced approach. Don't just apply a one-size-fits-all rule. Respect the unique character of each neighborhood and make a plan accordingly that fits in with that neighborhood. Now, Milton doesn't just talk about historic preservation, they've actually built it into how they govern. So let's take a little bit of a deeper look at the historic preservation and the community priority. Now, Milton's historic district got listed on the National Register of Historic Places back in 1982, and that didn't just happen by chance. The locals pushed very hard to get their architecture recognized and to get established as a historic place. But they didn't stop there. In 2005, the town government formally adopted a historic preservation review, and then in 2006, Milton became what is called a Certified Local Government, or CLG for short, and this lets them access the National Park Service's resources for historic preservation and preservation in general, something that's pretty important when you're looking at a historic town. Now, it's important to note that becoming a CLG is no joke. It's a rigorous process that shows you're serious about preservation, and very few communities nationwide qualify, so it's a pretty big deal that Milton is one of these. Milton also formed the Historic Preservation Commission, or HPC, in 2007, specifically to protect the historic district. Now, these folks review any changes to historic properties to make sure that they don't mess up the character and that any changes are in line with the town's overall aesthetic. Now, they're still expanding their preservation efforts. In 2022, they amended the Milton Historic District to include 233 properties with extended boundaries that are all approved by the National Park Service, and that shows they're still committed to keeping their architectural heritage intact when so many other towns seem to be going the complete opposite way. Now, you may be wondering, how does this actually work in real life? Say you own a property in the historic district and you want to make changes. You would need to submit an application to the HPC, and they evaluate it using the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation. Now, these are kind of like the gold standard guidelines for historic preservation, so you just got to make sure that it fits within what they're asking. Now, these standards focus on keeping the important character features while still allowing some compatible changes. Now, that balance is absolutely crucial because preservation isn't just about freezing everything in time and saying that it's got to look a certain way. It's about managing change in a way that respects the history that came before us. So you may still be wondering, like, what's a real life example? Well, a homeowner on Union Street needed to replace some of the rotting windows in their home. The HPC worked with them to find some new windows that matched not only the style and proportions of the originals, but had some of those modern, energy efficient features that everyone is now looking for. It's what we call a win-win because the building keeps its historic look, but now it performs much better and is much more energy efficient. Another example is the Milton Theater. After getting some damage from Hurricane Sandy, it went through a careful rehab. They preserved the Art Deco facade and marquee while updating the inside to work for modern performances. If you haven't caught a show at the Milton Theater, I highly suggest you check it out. Now, these before and after transformations show how powerful preservation can be when it's done right and done correctly. It's all about finding that sweet spot between keeping the past and adapting for the future. And here's what most people don't get. Strong preservation doesn't necessarily kill growth. For Milton, it's actually boosting the growth. The preserved historic district creates this unique identity that attracts people, businesses, visitors, and it's an economic asset, not just a cultural one. And this directly feeds into the housing diversity that we're going to discuss a little bit later on, where you'll see exactly why these preserved historic homes are actually critical to Milton's overall housing strategy. But now let's check out something that Milton is doing and is pretty rare for a small town in America. It is growing steadily while keeping their character intact. Again, something that many other towns just simply cannot say. Now, Milton has been consistently growing for decades without turning into a place that looks completely different. That's actually kind of mind-blowing if you think about it, because so many other towns lose their charm and character as they experience the kind of growth that Milton has. Again, most small towns are either dying or growing in ways that absolutely destroy what made them special in the first place, and Milton's kind of found this middle path that works pretty well, which is balancing the historic with the new. Now, the median household income in Milton is about $65,000, which is just a bit above Delaware's average. A lot of people work in healthcare, education, tourism, and more we're seeing is remote positions. Now, this mix helps keep the town vibrant and supports local businesses. You can see it downtown where shops and restaurants are actually thriving. We're seeing new businesses open up there all the time, and it truly is coming alive. If you want to see a perfect example of Milton's balanced growth, check out the Granary at Draper Farms development, which just broke ground in June. It's going to be a massive development on 450 acres at the corner of Sand Hill Road and Gravel Hill Road. They're planning to build about 1,350 units over the next 20 years in this community, and the first phase of 175 units just got approved. And again, they broke ground just in June of this year, a few months ago. Now, if you follow coastal development at all, you would know that a project this size could totally overwhelm a small town like Milton, but Milton actually got this one right, and they've designed it in a proper way. 25% of the land is going to stay as open space with amenities like tennis courts and a farmer's market, and that's huge. Instead of just cramming in as many houses as humanly possible, they're creating community spaces and keeping green areas, which people have been asking developers to do for years around here. Now, this commitment to open space ties directly into the environmental connection strategy that we'll discuss in a minute, and it's creating a network of natural resources throughout the community, something that I'm really excited for. Now, this project brings some pretty major benefits to Milton, not just through the tax revenue, but also through added value, places like open space, athletic fields, and some other community amenities that would cost the town millions if they had to fund them on its own, which is pretty cool. Perhaps the smartest part about the Granary is that it's planned over a 20-year timeline. Now, that's going to give the infrastructure time to grow alongside the new housing, avoiding problems that come with rapid, unplanned expansion. Some will tell you that this debacle is what we have seen in some of our other towns along the coast, but I'll leave that for you to decide. Now, it's a clear example that Milton is focused on responsible long-term growth and not just trying to grow overnight like some other areas have experienced. Now, if you could see maps of how Milton has grown over time, you'd notice that development has always followed their comprehensive plan. New neighborhoods connect to existing ones, creating a coherent community rather than just these isolated bubbles of houses like we see in so many other locations. Looking a little bit deeper at the granary, the renderings of the development are actually pretty impressive. The farmers market, for example, is going to serve both new residents within the granary and the broader Milton community, creating a gathering space that builds social connection and keeps that community feeling alive, which so many love about Milton. This balanced approach to growth sets the stage for other aspects of community development as well that are all equally as impressive. And speaking of impressive, now let's see how this development strategy ties into their housing diversity approach, which, unlike many exclusive beach towns, keeps Milton accessible to a wide range of income levels. There's many towns that people have been simply priced out of, and Milton offers a little bit of something for everyone. You know the story and how it goes. Most desirable towns just keep getting more and more expensive until only the people that are wealthy enough can live there. Well, Milton's actually managed to maintain a mix of housing options while deepening their connection to nature, which is something that I haven't seen some of our other towns do. If we take just a moment to break down the Milton housing market, for instance, you got the historic downtown, you've got these beautifully preserved homes, and they'll range in price from $400,000 to $800,000 depending on when they've been updated. Now, these attract buyers who love that architectural character and being able to walk everywhere downtown because you'll be right in the mix of everything. Now, those historic buildings that we talked about earlier, this is where that preservation strategy really pays off in real economic terms. Then we've got planned communities like Heritage Creek and Cannery Village that offer some newer homes, often starting in the mid 400s. Now, these developments incorporate many of the design principles that we talked about earlier with some walkable streets and community features. Again, they've really blended well into the historic charm of the Milton area. And then there are some more affordable options in the neighborhoods that are surrounding the historic district. There are some options that start in the mid to upper 300s, which gives some of those first-time home buyers and moderate income folks a way in the door so that they don't feel like they can only buy, 15 minutes away from town. And here's what's more significant is that Milton is still way more affordable than nearby beach towns like Rehoboth and Lewis, where median prices there have gone well over $600,000. And this economic diversity keeps Milton a real community, not just a vacation spot or retirement destination. Again, it feels like everybody cares about everybody downtown. Now, the town's leader get that keeping this diversity is essential. They've got some initiatives to ensure affordable and workforce housing stays available even as the town gets more popular and those prices inevitably start to climb. But it's not just about housing. Milton also emphasizes their connection to nature, especially the Broadkill River. Now, if you'll remember, I mentioned this river earlier when talking about the history in Milton and its importance with the shipbuilding industry that we once saw here. And this is where that historical connection really comes full circle into the modern planning of the downtown area. Milton's comprehensive plan specifically mentions the community's desire to reestablish and strengthen its connections to the Broadkill River, which occupies a place of primacy in the town's emotional and physical heart. That's literally right from the comprehensive plan. So you can actually see this connection with the Governor's Walk footpath that follows the river through central Milton, and it gives everyone public access to the riverfront, which is a great feature to have right there in downtown Milton. Beyond town, the Nature Conservancy has a preserve along the river downstream, and then just a short drive from downtown is the Prime Hook National Wildlife Refuge with 10,000 acres of amazing habitats and really at the mouth of the Broadkill right there at the bay. Now, having these natural resources so close makes living in Milton that much better and gives people places to get outdoors and explore nature. It shows that Milton understands the community development isn't just all about buildings and the structures you put up. It's about the relationship between the built and natural environments. Milton's commitment to natural resources ties directly back to their balanced growth approach that we just discussed. Again, 25% of new development land is preserved as open space, which is required in the town's plan. And when you visit Milton, you'll feel how all of these elements come together to create this strong sense of place and community. The historic buildings, the walkable neighborhoods, and the riverside features all form this coherent kind of whole community that feels both rooted in history and ready for the future. What Milton shows us is simple but powerful. With thoughtful planning and community input and some respect for the town's history, those towns can continue growing while keeping what makes them special and maintaining that historic charm that so many love. Again, the historic preservation, the community-centered design, the balanced growth, the housing diversity, the environmental connection, these aren't just separate things, but they're actual pieces of one approach to community development and what they're doing in Milton. And as we've seen throughout this video, they all reinforce each other to create a complete community vision that makes Milton stand above any of the rest in our area. I think what's so cool about Milton's approach to this is that other places places could actually do this too. Communities of any size can adopt these principles and adapt them to their own situation. It just starts with asking the residents what they value and how they want their community to evolve as growth starts to occur, instead of getting 5 years down the road and wondering what the heck happened, where did all these people come from? If you are thinking about making a move to Milton, my team and I are here to help. All of our contact information is gonna be down below in the description. We would absolutely love to be your real estate resource of choice here along the Delaware coast. We've helped hundreds of people just like you right here from our channel, and we look forward to the opportunity to helping you meet all of your real estate goals here at the Delaware beaches. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you on the next one.